It is Weather Wagers, a holiday edition of Weather Wagers. Dan's got the beautiful background. I'm just by a wall in my basement, actually keeping an eye. This is being recorded on Thursday. If you're listening to us, just something fun for you to listen to over the holidays. We've got about a half hour to 40 minutes of content. A little different. We're both at home. We're off. Dan, we're enjoying some time for the holidays as well. I've got the Syracuse, Minnesota Pinstripe Bowl on the TV on the other side of me here. But we are enjoying bowl season. We're enjoying the NFL playoff season. And yeah, it's a little different today. We're not really going to make any picks. We're not going to review last week. We're going to get to all that when we're back in the office, so to speak. But we didn't want to not provide anything this week. So we're going to catch everybody up on the bowls that are left, the NFL playoff picture, and of course, Penn State's Rose Bowl. So welcome in, my friend. You look very Christmassy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You're wearing Penn State. I'm wearing Phillies.
Yeah.
I mean, two teams that when we started this podcast, I'm not sure either one of us had very, very high expectations for, but have certainly made this past year of podcasting fun, whether it was the Phillies World Series run or now Penn State capping off their 2022 and moving into 2023 with a berth into the Rose Bowl. And we've had our own colleague, Ali Barubi, there. She's enjoying Disneyland right now. That's part of the festivities that the players get to enjoy. So a lot going on there. But Brett, do you remember, you mentioned the Pinstripe Bowl. Do you remember not that long ago when we as Penn State fans at the beginning of Franklin's tenure were excited for the Pinstripe Bowl?
Well, I do, and I think we should be excited for the Rose Bowl this year. It seems like there are not a lot of opt-outs. We are going to get into all of that. As you said, Ali Barubi is there for ABC 27, and we'd like to get her on this podcast,
We
perhaps when she
would.
gets back to tell us a little bit, if she has the time, to talk to us about the experience and hopefully about a Penn State victory. So we're going to get into all of that, Dan. But where do you want to start?
Well, I think let's start with, we kind of left things hanging last week talking about the Eagles and Dallas playing on Christmas Eve, which
Good
did you
job.
watch? Did you watch that game? I mean, it was fun.
Well, and unfortunately, I didn't. I was at church. I had kind of one eye on it, and then we went to the Christmas Eve service. But kudos to you. I know. I thought Dallas was going to win big. I did get the win. I think it was right at that
Yeah,
six
I think so
point
too.
margin. So I don't think either one of us can claim victory there. Unfortunately for the Eagles, it did not go our way, and I just had that feeling. Dallas is good enough. I know that you don't think they are, but I think they're good enough to not be able to lose to the Eagles twice, especially when we were playing a backup quarterback. Now, listen, I thought that a lot of things that you said did come true. I mean, Minshew was good enough to get that victory,
Yes.
and the Eagles fought hard. It certainly, they didn't lay down like I thought maybe they would, and kind of just let the Cowboys have that one. So that to me was actually a good sign, even though we lost. Now we've got to get back on track and get one more victory here to secure that home field against the Saints this week. But it was a tough game. I'm not that upset we lost it. We gotta get them where they count here coming up in later January and February.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm thrilled with the way they played. It was a fun game, especially in the second half. They had points in the game that they could put the game away, but it was actually turnovers for the Eagles that really let Dallas come back and win. At one point, the Eagles had a 10-point margin of a lead in the third quarter, and it let it slip away. Miles Sanders, of all people, one of the fumblers, Boston Scott, another one, and some of that could be, different quarterback, used to the way, Jalen Hurts is handing off the ball, but all indications are Jalen Hurts is going to be just fine, which is the good news. We're a little bit worried about the cornerback position. Avonte Maddox got hurt again, the slot corner for the Eagles, and unfortunately the backups for the Eagles at safety and corner in this past game were kind of getting beat up by CeeDee Lamb. So if there's one thing to somewhat be concerned about over the next couple of weeks, they need to get healthy is the secondary. But again, can't complain too much with a two-loss team with a backup quarterback that really played their tails off. Let's quickly run through here, and I'll do this via audio, some of the playoff positioning here, if you will, of the NFC. So the NFC itself is pretty well figured out at the top. The Eagles need one victory here out of the next two games to clinch the number one seed. The Vikings sit with a one-game lead at the number two seed over the 49ers, and then the Cowboys come in at fifth. Now, in the hunt, where there are still playoff berths available in the NFC, we have the struggling Buccaneers. They can barely score, but they're still in the playoff hunt. The Giants, who have been sliding here as of late. Washington, the Commanders, they've also been not so hot as of late. Again, some of these teams kind of struggling down the stretch. Now, if everything ended today, they would all be in. But again, in the hunt for different seeding are the Buccaneers, the Giants, and the Commanders. On the bubble, these teams need a lot of things to go right. They need to win too. Seattle Seahawks, which again, Brett, you've had a history with them, my friend. Detroit, the Packers, Carolina, and the Saints. And I can't believe the Saints still have a chance to make it, but the Eagles can knock off the Saints here this weekend. Now, do you assume that the Eagles beat the Giants in the last game, Brett? No matter what happens, whoever's playing, do you think they beat the Giants in probably a game that doesn't mean a whole lot?
Well, I mean, if you go by how they played against the Cowboys in a pretty meaningless game, yeah, I think they can. I mean, I think they're better than the Giants, no doubt. I mean, we saw that a couple of weeks ago. So there's two games left, and I just think we got to beat the Saints,
Yep, and I
and
think we
then
should be able to do that. I mean, they're playing Andy Dalton, for God's sake. I mean, I think the Eagles can do that.
yeah, and then come back and try to just cap off a very impressive year by beating the Giants twice. That would be amazing. Now, I think we can. I think we can finish out here and go 2-0. Now, do we know? I know you mentioned it before. Is there any indication about Jalen Hurts coming back during the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, I think he wants to be back. The question is, will he be allowed to play? I think he does come back for the Saints game here, wraps up the number one seed. Then he can take the following week off. Then they get a bye too. I mean,
Right.
that's the
Yeah.
thing.
That's
Only
helpful.
only the top seed gets a bye now. So
Right.
it is important to lock that up. Plus, they'd have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which, again, we saw how that worked in 2017. It got the Eagles in a great position, even with a backup quarterback in Nick Foles, to make a Super Bowl run. So I'm excited about that. But I mentioned the Giants game because if the Eagles knock off the Giants and the Packers win out, guess what? Aaron Rodgers is in the playoffs. He found a way in.
Yeah, he did, and I didn't even do my hair for this podcast. So I know if you're watching us on YouTube, that's okay. I've got my by the way, I've got my Clark Griswold uh,
Hey,
Christmas mug ready to go. Um, Listen, let's do this, Dano. If you can share your screen here, and let's talk about the weather for some of these games. Now that we think we have the Eagles figured out, I hope that we do. Once again, I'll go through some of the Week 17 matchups here, and hopefully we can break
yep,
down
I'm
the
gonna
forecast a little bit.
here we go with the forecast. So you should just be seeing Nerd World here of the
Yeah,
European model if you're watching us in
yeah,
video form.
perfect.
So,
By the way,
Brett,
shout out. We had a lot of folks give us props with last week's episode on Twitter, and we appreciate that. We are trying to mostly have fun and talk about what we love, football and different sports, and of course combine it with the weather. If we can maybe make you a little money, that's great. Certainly, if you see our records, you may not want to follow all of our advice, but we definitely try to take this seriously as much as we try to have fun with it. So thanks to all of you for listening. We are getting some folks to give us some props on Twitter, and we appreciate that after last week. But this is a new week, Dan. So we start tonight, another fairly decent game. I think everybody kind of laughed at that prime football schedule, knowing that because it was streaming, they wouldn't get a lot of good games. And they certainly haven't been the best games, but there have been some intriguing matchups. So we've talked about that over the course of the year. Tonight's the finale for prime Thursday night football. And the Cowboys and the Titans, an interesting matchup because the Cowboys certainly would like to secure a pretty high seed in the NFC playoffs. The Titans need to make it.
yeah,
Um,
the Titans are really struggling, and I don't know what's going wrong there. I mean, perhaps you don't trade AJ Brown, your best offensive player, to the Eagles, but hey, as I keep saying
we'll
all
take
year
them.
long, we'll take him. We're very happy for it. The Tennessee Valley, I think, should be dry here tonight, up through basically from Dallas to the Tennessee Valley. There is a plume of moisture, and that's really
Right.
going to be the cause for concern here, Brett. Starting Friday in the south, and then working its way up the area of high pressure along the East Coast and moving into the mid Atlantic, the Northeast, heading into Saturday and Sunday. Now, Sunday's more of a New England threat by the time the storm comes through. But here's the key part of all this. We just had some record setting cold for Christmas Eve and Christmas. Temperatures in the single digits and in the teens. And now, here this week, we're back into the 50s,
Yeah.
possibly even near 60 degrees before plain rain comes through with this system.
It doesn't look like we're going to see a repeat of that Arctic air anytime soon. And most of the games this week after tonight's finale for Prime, they are all going to be played on New Year's Day, Dan. So there are no Saturday games this week, as that is reserved for the college football playoff. We will get into that. So let's take you through Sunday's games here. We've got the Dolphins at the Patriots. That one you said could be impacted perhaps at least a little bit on Sunday,
Yeah,
with
before
some
that
rain.
system pulls out.
Yeah, that's going to be an important game. As you noted, New England is on the bubble. They're not dead yet, and they could
No.
sure use a victory to maybe even keep the Dolphins out of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just trying to survive. Both teams are trying to survive as much as possible. I also want to point out, though, leading into Sunday and Monday, looking at the Penn State game, who would ever thought that you'd have to worry about rain and cool weather for the Rose Bowl? But the weekend leading up to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena will be damp, will be cooler, and the day of the Rose Bowl itself looks like temperatures will be in the 50s once the front passes. So it's not necessarily all sunshine and roses for the Rose Bowl this year.
Yeah, but it should be dry for game time on Monday.
Yep, Monday looks dry as I'm taking you through here. Monday itself, but you were going back to Sunday, so
yeah, back to Sunday. So again, you've got the Eagles game that is in Philadelphia. Do we think that's going to be wet, or are we going to escape that threat on Sunday?
Well,
if you can go back a little bit there and play it out.
Go back. So Sunday itself, I think will just be kind of windy and cooler. So this is about game time Sunday. Sunday afternoon, evening looks dry in Philly, maybe some lake effect rain or snow showers to the northwest, but nothing close by. Again, it might be a little bit breezy during the game, but it doesn't seem like that bothers Jake Elliott too much at home.
No, so that's good news. Then you've got the Colts at the Giants. That one as well should be dry. The Panthers Buccaneers. Again, the Buccaneers should roll with this one, you would think, although the Panthers have shown signs of life. So what about Kansas City? We're seeing some snow out in the Rockies there. The Broncos come to town. This should be an easy win for the Chiefs, as long it looks like Arrowhead is dry Sunday afternoon there.
Yeah, it's more Monday that system comes through over Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Iowa, that whole area. As you can see there's actually could be thunderstorms late Monday into Tuesday in that area.
What about some other outdoor games here? We're going to hit the outdoor ones. Browns Commanders. Again, that should just be some breezy conditions on New Year's Day.
Yes.
As Cleveland travels there. How about the Jets at the Seahawks? Any rain in Seattle? You made a mention that this is an intriguing game. Both teams kind of sitting on the bubble here. Tough pick, too.
Yeah, I'd say it's a very tough pick. Two teams that struggle to score on offense, have anemic offenses for that matter. It looks like it'll be dry on Sunday. Now, there's a front coming through. It looks like Monday, late Monday into Tuesday. So the Pacific Northwest has been a little active lately. It looks like it'll be quiet at least for Sunday.
Well, that is good news. How about the Packers? Lambeau Field, Vikings coming to town. The Packers might be able to win this game. The Vikings are already locking things up.
Right. Yeah, and the Packers need this. You kind of doubted whether or not they could go down to Miami and win, which I'm not sure what's going wrong with Tua right now. I don't know if it's the accumulation of hits, but he threw, I think, 3 picks in the second half. Not a good look, but it looks like Lambeau actually could be unfrozen for a change, and not much going on Sunday other than maybe a early morning, early afternoon time frame for a passing shower or two.
All right, and then 2 games to wrap things up, Sunday and Monday Night Football. Steelers-Ravens again in Baltimore. How we looking Sunday night? And do we think the Steelers have a shot here, or is Lamar coming back? And can the Ravens actually, keep their? They're in the playoffs, I believe.
They're in now. Yep.
Can they keep it that way and secure a fairly decent seeding?
Well, again, it's similar to the Packers. The Steelers, if they win out, there are certain scenarios that they could get into the playoffs.
Right.
I'm not sure they have enough firepower. Now, if Huntley's playing, the backup for the Ravens, I give them a fighter's chance. I mean, let's face it, Mike Tomlin plays defense. So if they can score just enough, I mean, Kenny Pickett and company may end up winning or stealing a game from the Ravens.
It's hard to believe. Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. So Syracuse and Minnesota, by the way, 0-0. No surprise there. They are locked in it. And then finally, how about a good one on Monday night? Bills, Bengals.
Fast forward.
Um,
So yeah, the battle of two good quarterbacks there, that's for sure. Josh Allen and Mr. Joe Burrow. Again, Monday should be just fine. Holding off the rain for now.
good.
So we have the system that comes through on New Year's, and then there's a little bit of a break before the next one comes out of basically the same area. So that storm bringing snow over the Rockies will pick up some Gulf moisture, and then head eastward. But it's not really until Tuesday and Wednesday we see that developing.
Well, yeah, and so the Monday night game looks good, but boy, that's going to be a fascinating one. We're not making picks this week, as we said. This is just a conversation. We're going to get back on track next week. Remember, we are going to pick up through the Super Bowl. It is really tight right now. We haven't forgotten about the pie in the face bet, and then some people have asked us, including our colleagues, what are you guys going to do when there's no football to talk about? Well, there's always baseball, the baseball off season, and of course, we're going to try to line up some interviews and different people to have on the podcast here in the off season of football, not only to talk about the future of some of our favorite programs, but just in general. We're going to reach out to some folks and try to get them on the podcast. And there's always going to be stuff to talk about, even in the off season. As you know, Dan, this is a 24/7, 365 business, and as well with these teams, it's the same way. So we're going to get into that, but give me a pick in this Bills-Bengals game. This isn't going to count for anything. I'm just curious what you think. It's two teams that should be in. I believe the Bills have clinched. I think the Bengals. Did you say the Bengals have clinched?
Yeah, let me double check that. I mean, it's hard to keep track anymore because these scenarios change so much. The Bengals have clinched the playoffs. They are currently the third seed at 12-3.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, 11-4. They are 11-4. They're sitting atop first place in the North. They are sitting one game behind the Chiefs and one game behind the Bills, for that matter, for the number one seed. So this is for seeding.
This game is for seeding, and therefore it should count, and it should be a good game, right?
I would think so. I actually, Joe Burrow and company scare me right now because
Yeah.
they play a little blend of defense. They also score a lot. They have the experience of just being in the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah.
there's just something about the Bills, and I don't know if it's because of the Jim Kelly era that I get concerned as it really starts to matter down the stretch. The Bills knock off the Chiefs on a regular basis, it seems like, but this will be a big test for the Bills and see what they got here to see if they can lock up the number one seed.
Yeah, 100%.
But if you're asking me who I would take, I'll take the Bengals at home.
I'm going to take the home team as well there. I'm going to take the Bengals at home. So we agree on that. Okay, let's talk. Let's shift gears now. We're going to talk college, and I want to talk about very briefly here just the rest of the schedule because there are bowl games going into the weekend.
Yes, sir.
And lots of fun to be had here. It is the most wonderful week of the year. Today, remember, we are recording this on Thursday. You'll probably be listening to this tonight if you get it, or maybe over the weekend when you have a few moments. I like to listen to podcasts when I'm taking down the Christmas lights. So maybe some of you will be doing that as well. We go to Florida State, Oklahoma. That game is this afternoon at 5:30. And then tonight at 9, Texas versus Washington. That game, actually, there's some opt-outs for Texas. Very intriguing game tonight. Texas going against Washington.
The Alamo Bowl.
In the Alamo Bowl, yeah. So kind of a home game for Texas there. Now tomorrow, a big lineup on Friday. You've got Maryland and North Carolina State in the Mayo Bowl.
That's actually a sneaky good game too, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, Pitt, UCLA. Interesting, especially with opt-outs. Notre Dame, South Carolina. A lot of chirping on both sides of that one, I've heard.
I agree, and Notre Dame too. It seems like they've wrapped up their big transfer, Sam Hartman coming in from Wake Forest for next year. So,
yeah.
What does Notre Dame have on offense if all of a sudden there's this changing of the guard happening behind the scenes?
It's a fascinating thing. All the transfers. We're going to get into that with Penn State in just a bit as well. Ohio, Wyoming coming your way then tomorrow at 4:30. That is the Barstool game. And then Clemson versus Tennessee in the Big Orange Bowl. That's at 8 o'clock on ESPN. Then you've got the CFP on the 31st, New Year's Eve, with Alabama, Kansas State kicking it off in the Sugar Bowl. Iowa and Kentucky, the Music City Bowl. Take the under there. I don't think that should be any doubt.
Scoring.
Not much scoring. How about Michigan, TCU, and Georgia, Ohio State? And then Monday, because of all of the pro games being on Sunday, we have a good lineup. Illinois, Mississippi State. That'll be a good one to honor the late Mike Leach. Tulane, USC in the Cotton Bowl. LSU, Purdue in the Citrus Bowl. And then the season ends before the national championship game with the Rose Bowl as Penn State takes on Utah. So there are plenty of college football games left on the slate as we sit here on this Thursday. I think just looking at them, if you had to make one play, and this is just for fun, remember we're not counting it, but I'm going to take the under in that Iowa Kentucky game. What about you?
Yeah, I think I would take the under in that. I will. The Tulane USC game continues to stick out to me. Will USC even show up? I might take Tulane to beat USC.
Wow, let's check. We use our friends at Caesars here. So should I? You
It's
want
a
me to just
it's a
look up?
it's a tight line.
Is it?
USC's only
Just let
favored by
me.
2 points. The over
Oh,
under
they
is
are. Okay, you
62.
have it up. Good,
Yeah,
2 point favorite. Oh boy, I kind of like that.
Tulane money line, baby.
Yeah. By the way, we're talking about pro, we're talking about college, and we've seen it being reported by the Athletic, and it was reported by Pete Thamel of ESPN that Kevin Warren,
Very interesting.
the Big Ten president, is a candidate to become the president of the Chicago Bears.
Very curious to me. I mean, I always think of pro football as being the top, but you mentioned an important point before we started this podcast that he's the commissioner of the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is taking off right now.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, if you think about just the most powerful people in sports, Jim Delaney, when he was Big Ten commissioner, was maybe the most powerful man in all of sports. And I think Kevin Warren has established himself right up there with Greg Sankey, Roger Goodell, and then
yes.
those two. When you think about the importance of money and exposure, what these guys have done for their respective leagues is incredible. So to me, just being the president of the Bears is almost a step back. But you don't know how these guys think. You don't know how they operate. Kevin Warren was, with the Vikings for a long time. He's been around the pro game. Maybe this is an opportunity he can't pass on. We're used to people being in jobs a long time,
Right.
like Jim Delaney was, but that's not the way of the world anymore. And maybe Kevin Warren came in, stabilized the Big Ten, and now wants to take this job, especially if the Bears are going to try to make him. I mean, they have big problems, so it wouldn't be it wouldn't be unheard of to want to bring somebody in to stabilize that. But I have a hard time believing he would leave his post as Big Ten commissioner to be president of the Bears. But that's just my read on it. I don't know anything. Certainly, I could be made to look like a fool in a few hours. Who knows? I
Yeah,
just
I
don't
mean,
see
it's
him
very
leaving.
interesting timing. I mean,
Yeah.
again, with USC, UCLA, and possibly more joining the ranks of the Big Ten here, to kind of lose your head at this time. Now, again, some of this could be, maybe he wants a better deal from the Big Ten. It's hard to know. It is definitely hard to know. Before we move on from the college football talk here, let me ask you: does Michigan have a chance against TCU, or is TCU going to roll?
No, no, I think Michigan has a very good chance against TCU. The question I think that we should be asking, does Ohio State have a chance against Georgia?
Nope.
And I think we both feel that while the talent is there, the physicality with Georgia is so strong. And then the question is, will Georgia then just roll over the Michigan TCU winner, and will it be just what happened last year with Georgia rolling over Michigan, Georgia rolling over everybody? That's the prevailing theory. I don't see any reason to think otherwise. Um, so do you? I mean, I think Michigan may not cover. I think that could be a hard fought game. But I think they win, and I think they face Georgia in the national title game. And but you know what, Dan? This is college football. Sometimes you have to expect the unexpected.
Yeah, it's just the thing that I always don't like about this time of the year is there's such a break in between game action,
Right.
and you just don't know what team is going to show up at the end of that. And Michigan seems to have positive momentum right now in their program, but TCU also has a lot of positive momentum. I mean, you can't open a web page right now and not see the face of Sonny Dykes. I mean, it's been the story of the year in many ways. So I do think TCU could come into this game. It's the quote unquote Fiesta Bowl, even though it's hard to keep track of what's what anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I think TCU has a really good chance,
It wouldn't
especially
it wouldn't surprise me.
especially if Michigan struggles to run the ball. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see. I mean, they didn't obviously struggle against Ohio State and Penn State, but TCU's defense might be just as strong as Penn State's.
And they're going to be jacked up for this game. I mean,
Right.
that of the two games, that one I think is going to be more fun to watch.
I agree with you.
Um, but we'll see. I mean, that's the fun of it. It is going to be one heck of a New Year's Eve. So we will be ready for that and to cover the aftermath of that next week, and then to talk about the championship matchup, whoever that may be, which is going to be fun. And we're going to make our picks there. We will pick the Penn State game. So
Yep, we
let's
got to do it.
we got to do it. So let's talk about that coming up here in just a bit. Let's frame this. Penn State at the Rose Bowl, as you said, they've got all the Disney festivities out of the way. Now it's time to kind of focus on really getting ready for game prep here. Talk about the big picture of where the program stands. We've seen a lot come out of the transfer portal this week. The program seems to have a lot of momentum. Kirk Herbstreit, I saw, made a quote this week. I don't know if you saw that. The
I
Penn
did.
State is right there. They remind him of where Michigan was last year. Now, we know Herbstreit secretly has a thing for Penn State, not so secretly. I don't know if I can go that far. I felt like, I mean, Michigan did make the playoff last year. I almost felt like they had a better team last year. They certainly didn't drop off this year. I don't know if Penn State is there yet. I think we need some more physicality, and we certainly need the quarterback play. Now, the pieces are there, the running backs are there, but Dan, where do you see the program, and how would you assess some of these transfers coming in? Has Penn State done enough? Do they still need to do more as we set the stage for the Rose Bowl and beyond?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, all focus is on the current game with Sean Clifford and the kind of marred past of Sean Clifford, and like him or not, he got into the Rose Bowl. I mean, it's a 2-loss season. There's nothing to sneeze at there. But a lot of folks continue to look ahead to the Drew Aller era. So there is a lot of excitement there. I mean, it's a 5-star quarterback coming in. And let's face it, I think there's a lot to be excited about when it comes to bringing in a 5-star quarterback to a program not known for recruiting quarterbacks. But what I do still worry about is obviously you have the running backs, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen.
Touchdown, Golden Gophers. Sorry.
Hey, wow. Who wasn't
Mo Ibrahim? There you go.
Shocker. Total
Okay.
shocker.
Didn't mean to interrupt, but
no. Well, hey, he is a foe in Sean Clifford's career, so it's always important to bring back the Golden Gophers. I just think they're a little short on wide receivers, especially with Parker Washington declaring for the NFL draft. Brenton Strange is also going to be in the NFL draft after saying he'll play in the Rose Bowl, but he will not come back for next year. They have Theo Johnson at tight end. They have Tyler Warren at tight end. Yeah. So, and they have some recruits in the pipeline there, but the wide receiver position is tenuous to me. We saw a little bit of Wallace. He goes by different names. Some people call him Trey. I've seen his name listed as Harrison Wallace. He might be a player, a threat. Caden Saunders is also a threat, a young guy. So again, can there be some improvement there? Maybe. But it's very interesting to me that the only transfer from the portal so far is Storm Duck. So he's going to replace Joey Porter, at least Joey Porter's roster spot, it seems like.
Guy comes in with a pedigree already, though.
Yes, he does. And I also have this list from Blue White Illustrated, so from On3 Sports. Other names to keep an eye on: Deontay Thornton from Oregon, West Virginia wide receiver Caden Prather, and Kent State receivers Devontae Walker and Dante Cephas are among the top targets for Penn State. Now, if you had been following along with some of the transfers early in the process, Southern Florida Jimmy Horn Jr. was a big name that Penn State offered as a wideout. He already decided to declare for the Deion Sanders show in Colorado, so he is not coming to Penn State.
Yeah, but right there, you're already seeing the Deion effect, where teams are losing recruits to him. And I'm not 100%. Suggesting Penn State necessarily lost him, but that is what Deion brings and why he is such a threat being at a Power 5 school.
Yeah, and I think going back to the idea of coaching, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I think they have a legitimate shot to give Michigan and Ohio State a lot of fuss next year if they come back in with Mike Yurcich again and they come back with Manny Diaz again. It's still speculative whether both will stay. I think we're in a better position now than we ever have been to keep those two guys.
I agree.
But let's face it, they're going to be highly sought after.
Well, they will, but luckily nothing has happened yet. So I think that's good news. We do have to get through the Rose Bowl. We did okay in the recruiting rankings. We certainly have um, the quarterback, the running backs. We've got playmakers. We would like to see some more at wide receiver, as you say, but I think it would go a long way. A lot of eyeballs on this Rose Bowl for Penn
Yeah.
State to capitalize on this, which Franklin said needs to happen this time around. So let's talk a little bit about the game itself. Penn State, very few opt-outs. Joey Porter, the biggest one, but Utah, their tight end is sitting out, along with a couple of other guys that could make an impact here.
Yeah, I still think I've been confident about this going into it. I think Utah is a very formidable opponent, but compared to the teams we've lost to this year, Michigan and Ohio State, I don't think they hold a candle to them, to be honest, my friend. So I think Penn State.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, the only thing that does scare me, they have a little bit of a bugaboo when it comes to these physical teams,
Yes,
James
I agree.
Franklin's teams. And Utah, there is nobody that's more physical than Utah. By the way, they left the Rose Bowl last year with a bad taste in their mouth after losing to Ohio State. They are going to be physical. They are going to want to run the ball. And they're and Cam Rising, who is playing,
He's
he's a
tough.
very good quarterback. And Kyle Whittingham, he's one heck of a football coach.
He is. I mean, I think it's going to be a close game, but with the amount of talent and the excitement, what I like to see right now, Brett, is the excitement coming from the players. I'm hearing great quotes from Sean Clifford, Brenton Strange,
Yeah,
some of the
they
other
want to
players
be
that have.
there.
They want to be there. They're into this. They want to play. They see the potential. The big thing is they see the potential where this program can go. Theo Johnson was talking about. I saw some quotes today from his press conference saying that this would be huge for us and for the future of the program. So that's some buy-in there for the guys coming back.
100%. And let's not ignore what I think is another very important piece of all of this. Not only in going out there and trying to really compete in the Rose Bowl, but then capitalizing on it,
Right.
getting transfers in here, selling this program. Pat Kraft.
Yes, this is huge. This is their moment because James Franklin's mentioned it several times leading up to this point that he feels like the last time with the Saquon Barkley era, the Trace McSorley era, that they didn't capitalize the way they should have coming out of that Rose Bowl bid. So, and that was a fantastic game against USC, a game that many people didn't think we had much of a chance in. So, I think this year, if they find a way to win, which I think they will, it could play huge into getting some of these transfers interested in Penn State, and then the snowballing recruiting continues to happen.
I think so too. So, what's the latest line going into this game, Dan? Can we look it up? Because
Well,
I have not been paying attention the last couple of days.
as usual, Penn State gets no respect. Utah's favored by 2 points, over
Yeah.
under 52.5.
Now, that, by the way, that was when I looked last week. That was the line then, too. So it hasn't really moved, by the way. Utah favored by a couple. And, Penn State, the reason I know that you say they don't get any respect. Well, I'm a Penn State guy, and there are many times that I feel that way too. But here's the deal. You know, you want respect, then you go out and win this game. Okay.
Yep, 100%.
Because right now, and I've heard this from people that I know and from on various podcasts I listen to, the reality is this: we had a 10-2 year. We looked really good at times. We have talent. Who did we actually beat?
Right. It's always going to be the question. And we beat Purdue.
Yeah.
We
But
we
when
beat
that
Purdue
when
on the
that's your
road.
best win, I mean, you don't really have a lot to show for it.
No, I mean I would still say Minnesota was our second best win at home, whiteout.
Yeah, they're an 8 and
Um,
14 though, and I was still impressed going down to Auburn and doing what we did, and they were not that great, and we knew that going in. But I think there's some questions there. Utah is probably going to be one of the better opponents we faced, and when we faced two top opponents, we played okay, but we certainly didn't play well enough to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other key win was the Maryland game because Maryland does seem to be figuring it out, and that's a team to keep watching, a program to keep our eyes on. I don't think they have the resources Penn State does. I think sometimes too, as Penn State fans, we have to kind of live with the hard truth that Michigan and Ohio State are always going to outspend us and have more resources in many ways compared to our program. So that's where this whole capitalizing on the Rose Bowl is so important.
Yeah, but they don't have to, and I think that's what Pat Kraft is saying. Uh, we are Penn State. We should be right up there.
I agree. Well, believe me, I totally agree with that. It's just now we got to see it happen.
Yeah, now we have to see it happen. So, but in general, the good news is, other than perhaps a little rain in New England, the weather looks good for most of the games this weekend as we move into 2023. We're still going to have Week 18 in the NFL to discuss next week. We're going to be picking games throughout the playoffs, which is going to be a heck of a lot of fun. We will be picking the national championship game, so we still have plenty of time left here to determine our pie in the face bet winner. It's been a heck of a season doing this, and we
It
appreciate all the
has.
feedback from all of you here. We hope you've had some great holidays. But let's wrap it up. Let's give a pick. Utah's favored by 2 points. So who do you like on the Rose Bowl Monday?
I take Penn State money line. I think this really could be huge for James Franklin and company. And you will not find a person other than me that wants to see James Franklin succeed as much as I do. I like him. I like his energy. I like that he has stayed with the program even when he had chances to go other places. Penn
Yeah,
State wins. It will probably be a good game, but I think they find a way to win. And I will be ecstatic. I will be ecstatic that they pulled off a two-loss season for the Nittany Lions here in a year that was still kind of built as a rebuilding year.
I agree. I think that with the young talent emerging, to go out and have an opportunity, the way the chips fell, to play in the Rose Bowl, if you can get a win there, you win one of the last Rose Bowls that will actually be on its own. You get to 11 wins, and then you can hopefully use some of that momentum to propel you forward. I think it's great stuff. So I'm going to pick Penn State money line too. Are we? Is it a little bit of a homer pick? Sure, it is. But we certainly think they can do it. The question will be, would it surprise us that much if if Utah comes out, Kyle Whittingham is what I was trying to say, and just punches James Franklin right in the mouth and
It
his
could happen.
defensive line and O line, and that's where I think we have to be a little bit careful.
Well,
But
but this is where I like Manny Diaz, though, to be
I
honest with you.
agree. I heard Chris Fowler, who's calling the game. This will be one of Penn State's, probably the final Kirk Herbstreit Chris Fowler game, by the way. A great way to go out. Fowler said as he was reviewing his notes that Utah struggles with something that Manny Diaz does a lot, and they sneak attack coverage where they rush four guys, but then they drop some back. So it's almost like a fake rush, and Rising struggles a lot with that. And when that happens, he tends to miss some throws. So will Penn State be able to exploit that? That's something he had his eye on going over his game notes. So I agree with you, and I agree with Chris Fowler that Manny Diaz could be not necessarily a wild card here, but he could be the difference maker.
I think he could be the difference maker. And I want to see Sean Clifford go down with the Rose Bowl sunset as a winner. Again,
Yeah,
people may have differing opinions about the guy, but I mean, let's face it. If they pull this off, it'll be the second time he led them to a two-loss season.
yeah, and he's got all the records, and yeah, he had the COVID year, but still, for better or for worse, he is going to be up there in the record books and remembered pretty fondly, I think, despite the fact that there were some issues there. So, well, listen, this has been fun.
It
Just
has.
catching up. We've got Dallas and Tennessee tonight. We've got all kinds of bowl games the next few days. I hope that you enjoy as much football as I plan on enjoying.
Right back at you.
I think it's been great. It's been a great season to cover all of these games and all the weather with you. And we've actually had some weather this year to talk about. We've had
I
some cold,
agree.
we've had some snow, we've had some hurricanes. And that when we designed this podcast, this was the point. We wanted to have some fun with it. Throw out our advice, whether you take it or leave it. That's fine. You're not going to hurt our feelings. And also, kind of bring a passion to ours of to life in front of you. So we're going to continue it. We appreciate it, and what a fun holiday week it has been. We're going to get back on track next week with actual picks. We're going to get back on track with stats and maps and graphics and all of it. But Dan, I got to tell you, this was fun to have this kind of holiday chit chat with you as we line things up.
I agree. I mean, you and I are watching the games. We're digesting it the same way everyone else is through their holidays. And I was traveling the last couple of days. I know you've been busy. So it's nice to still have some of this football to kind of come home to at the same time.
It is. It is a bit of comfort food. So I know you're going to be working a little bit over the New Year's holiday
Yes.
and then taking some time off. I will be off until the 3rd, and then I think our next podcast will resume next Wednesday when we are both back and ready to go in the new year. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much, Dan, as always. And let's go Nittany Lions. Let's get a win out in the Rose Bowl.
Let's do it.